Hello, BookTube. As you know, March is a widowmaker of a month on BookTube. Tons and tons of events. We've gone over a bunch of them already. I have a hand in a bunch of them myself. And I thought I'd go over a lot of those events and give you an idea of some of the things that I'll be reading for them. Of course, there's Classics and Company, which is ongoing. That is Micah Cummins and Ann Novella, who are doing a different book roughly a month at a time for the whole of 2023. They're doing Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa. That's a big one. There's also March of the Mammoths, which is literally big, where you are supposed to pick an enormous book that's been sitting on your shelf, something 800 pages or more, and give it a read or a reread. I am trusting that the publishing world will do that for me, although one of the picks that I have for another event will work for March of the Mammoths. There's also March Mystery Madness, which is an old BookTube event and a favorite of mine. I'll be reading and discussing a large number of murder mysteries, probably a lot more frequently and at a greater length when I don't have a house guest. I have a house guest, and that kind of shifts your obligations. But there's also the Irish Readathon, which I have been thinking about. I've been watching videos about it, but I hadn't really thought about what I would read. And once again, I am trusting to the publishing world to provide me with things that I will read. I wanted to show you the two of those that have come to mind. Let me find them here. The first one is this. It's by John Gower. It's called The Turning Tide. It's a biography of the Irish Sea, over which I have traveled many, many times. This is I don't know the exact release date on this thing in the U.S., but I'm looking forward to it. Sea biographies can either be really tedious, just a collection of the dumbest anecdotes that are unverified by anybody, or they can be really good studies. And the other one is this thing. This is by Rory Carroll. It's a microhistory in a way, but the feeling that I get from it is that it's going to expand out quite a bit from one particular thing, one particular event that took place in 1984. I think it was 84. I should know that. But this is There Will Be Fire, Margaret Thatcher, the IRA, and the 2 minutes that changed history. And this is about the 1984 attempt by the IRA to assassinate Margaret Thatcher that came pretty close to succeeding and changed a lot. I was avidly following the news of the event when it was happening, but I don't think I've ever read a book just on it. Of course, it features prominently in Thatcher biographies, but I don't think I've read one dedicated to that event. So we'll see. Sometimes, again, those things can have endemic weaknesses. Sometimes microhistories like that end up being boring, despite how exciting the event they're about is, because the writer isn't doing anything more than an expanded Wikipedia entry. We'll see. We'll see. There's also an event in March called Her Storython, which centers on books about women in history, written by women or about women in history. And there are quite a few coming up in March. There are quite a few books that fit that description. I want to show you some of them. Some of them we've seen before. Some of them are on my list anyway. Like, for instance, this is by Natalie Groeninger. This is The Final Year of Anne Boleyn. Which, again, much like, I mean, it's a microhistory if it's like that, but it will have to look at everything. It won't be possible to just write. There would be no point in writing a history of just 1 year. You're going to have to contextualize it. Then there's this thing. This is by David Waldstreicher. We've seen this already. This is The Odyssey of Phillis Wheatley. Big new biography of Phillis Wheatley that looks like it will be covering a lot more ground than all of the others. I've read a chunk of the advanced copy, and now I have the finished copy. So I will go through the finished copy, pencil in hand. Then another thing that we've already seen. This is biography by Larry Loftus of Corrie ten Boom, the watchmaker's daughter. That's coming out, I believe, in the month of Historython. And I thought there was one other. Yes, there was one other, which we've also seen. This is by Rebecca Boggs Roberts, and it is Untold Power. And this is about Edith Wilson, who started making presidential decisions in the White House when Woodrow Wilson was incapacitated with a stroke. That was kept from the public, and also kept from the public was the fact that a woman was making those decisions. That it wasn't delegated to his chief of staff or to the president of the Senate or anything like that. She was the one in control. So those are for Her Storython. They would be on my reading list anyway, but they fit that prompt. They fit that event which means I get to participate in yet another March event. There's also middle grade March. Uh, as a March event that has never really appealed to me. I'm always unclear on what middle grade actually is, who its intended readers are. That blurs for me a little in ways that, for instance, YA doesn't. And uh, there's also a bit of ire that's now a little bit outdated. For a while there, for about 10 years there was a fad where adults were compulsively, exclusively reading books written for children, YA and middle grade, and talking about them. Not a palate cleanser now and again, not something I find interesting, but this is all that I read. I don't read anything written for my own age. That fad is largely over, and I'm glad to see the back of it. But I did pick a book that I'm due for a reread. It's a big, huge thing, so it would work for March of the Mammoth. It's Bone by Jeff Smith, about three cousins out from Boneville who venture out into the broader world. It's beautifully drawn in black and white, really lovely stuff. And the plot, the story, just keeps expanding. At first, we think it's just going to be picaresque adventures, but then it becomes a grand epic fantasy, and Jeff Smith takes his time. But I am sure that I have seen Bone spin-off books or little shards of the whole story in the middle grade section of bookstores. I'm sure that I have. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that as an example. But there's also, in March, there's also Dwython, which is Welsh literature. And this coincides, again, with a reread that I want to do of an author who, I don't think he was born in Wales, but he grew up in Wales. So I think he would consider himself Welsh. And that is Philip Pullman. And this is his book, The Book of Dust, which is the second book in the La Belle Sauvage series. Big, ambitious thing that I read. I quite liked it. But it's a multi-layered, very fiercely complex thing, and I'm due for a reread, and it fits perfectly with Dwython, so I will just do that. And were there others? Well, there's the S&M Travel Book Club. Mark at Book Time with Elvis and I are doing it just forever. We are going to be reading travel writing, and we're doing A Time of Gifts by Patrick Lee Fermer. We have Forgotten Planet by Murray Leinster for Rogers Cheap Old Book Club. We have Wolf Hall is what we're reading for my own book club. And there's more, I'm sure, that I'm forgetting. It's just a lot of stuff. I myself love it. I love the crowded nature of it for BookTube. Everybody's making frantic videos about how crushing it is, and it's true. You can't do it all. But I think that's kind of fun, and that it all just happens to coincide on one major month is a lot of fun, and it lays the groundwork. I will be doing all this reading, but I'll be doing the writing that I usually do, but the extra writing, fiction, I will not be doing in March. I will be concentrating all of that extra time on lots of extra reading. I'll be saving up my fiction for April, which is Camp NaNoWriMo, then an informal spin-off of the main NaNoWriMo, where there is no preset word count. NaNoWriMo, you have a preset word count. You have to reach 50,000 words in order to win. But for Camp NaNoWriMo, it can be anything. They kind of want you to have a bare minimum of 8,000, which for me is one day. That's one day. I write about 8,000 words a day. But I'm not going to do any fiction in March. I'm not going to write any fiction. I love writing fiction. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to save it for April and ponder what I want to do for Camp NaNoWriMo. But this is just meant to be a list of things that I will definitely be reading for all of these BookTube events that are coming up. I'm curious to know how you're going to handle your March. And those of you who are invested in the BookTube world, of course, the perfect way to handle March for ordinary people would be just read what you want. But if you're invested in the BookTube world, you're probably going to want to do one or two of these events. How are you going to do that? Are you trying to find something that will satisfy a number of these at the same time? Maybe. I went through the lists of events, and I went through all sorts of candidate books. I couldn't find a book that satisfied more than 2 out of 8 events. Bone satisfies 2. But I'd love to know how you're handling March. I'm going to wrap this up, but feel free to let me know, and I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.